Here's where I'm starting this video today, the top. Now this is a really nice top. However, in a rollover, not so much. So today, I'm gonna build a roll cage. I'm probably gonna build a roll bar on top of that too. So we'll get started with that first. Before I do get started, thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. We're almost to a wrap-up on this M715, but surprisingly, all this cool little stuff that I've still got to do, like bumpers and winches and skid plates and things like that, take a lot of time. So we're going to start with the roll bar roll cage and work our way out from there. I'm kind of just doing this winging it process right now, just coming up with some ideas. Now usually I'll do cardboard, and I've done cardboard on this one enough where I kind of know the distance and shape I need. But I wanted to actually use a live piece. I have some. Doesn't take that much to cut her up and see if this idea of mine will work. Now that the plates are cut, I just start trimming and notching them so they fit up against the dash. Once I get them fit, then I drill them and then drill into the A-pillar portion of the dash so that they fit in two different pieces. Next, cut a plate underneath. Little trick here. Throw a little spray paint on the back side of the bracket I'm going to scribe. That way my little pick has something to scribe against. I'll just run the pick through the hole and it'll give me a place to drill. Now as it's coming together, I've got this plate underneath, the bracket up along the side of the dash, the top piece, which is where my upper hoop will mount to, and these will be the floor plates. Well, here's what I came up with to get around the door and door handles being interfered with. So the plate's bigger than it needs to be, but those holes were already drilled there. They go right around a piece of hat metal underneath, so it's a real strong place to put a plate. And then I can also put some thick plating or big washers underneath too. So the vertical pipe here, that 1 3/4 inch tube, comes up to a 1/4 inch plate that literally sits flush right underneath this where everything kind of comes together. There's a hole in the back of it I can drill as well to increase the strength, I guess. And then we've got this gusset, which will keep the plate from bending. It brings all your energy down to the tube. And this tube here is actually a piece of heavy wall like this, except I cut it so that it fits around the dash. And with these holes drilled, it creates a lot of shear strength. I've got this gusset here to support this tube, which is also tied into the dash face through the A-pillar. Now, the latch is going to have to go away. That's okay, I don't care. I can bolt that directly, I can move it over here. I can do a lot of things with that. So I'm not real concerned about the latch. Windshield can't come off anyway. So my next decision is, do I weld the tube directly to this and make this a permanent roll cage, or I can put a piece of tube about yay tall and make it a sleeve to where the cage drops down into it, and then we put a pin across it. But for getting around my cranks and keeping your feet clear and everything, I think this is a design that'll work pretty well. Next, I'll have to replicate it on the other side and then pull everything off and finish weld it. Stuff like this always looks really funny when you pull it out and set it down to do the finish welding, but that's what it is. Tell you, when you're not welding all the time, gets you out of practice. Well, welds certainly aren't as clean as they usually are. I am painting as I go on this installation. The second side's always easier to do than the first. Obviously, doing this roll bar and roll cage, using welders, plasma cutters occasionally, but you've also seen me use the chop saw here. This is an Evolution chop saw. It uses a cold cut bit, so it's not a friction bit. It doesn't get all hot. The other piece of equipment I just wanted to show you real quick is this Rogue Fab tube bender. Now, all the plates come in a kit. You can buy them assembled, but it's a lot more expensive. But all the little rails, the flat pieces, the flat sides, all that stuff, the little mount pieces, all this comes in a kit. You weld it together yourself. This kit came with a single 1.75 die. You do have to buy the cylinders like Harbor Freight, and I actually elected to save myself a whole bunch of energy and got the pneumatic pump for that. The other little piece of equipment I recommend is the little angle finder thingy. You can set this and zero it out on a tube, then move the tube around and re-zero it on the same plane. That way you don't get tubes that have all this weird walking stuff. I also leave myself notes where the bend starts to create. It comes with a bunch of other stickers on it and degrees. I always run the degree a couple degrees further than the degree I desire. That makes it account for the spring back when you release it. Other than that, I'm not really a great tube fabricator, but I can muddle my way through it. So we'll show you how that worked. Oh yeah, I did make the cart out of scrap metal, if that counts. Another quick side note, I always give myself measurements in degrees. That way I know exactly how to replicate a tube. I am going to have to cut the top hoop and adjust it a little more precise. This is what I use to slave a roll bar together. Heavy wall, 188 to 120, creates a very strong slug. Drill them, weld them. This doesn't look like much, but I want this roll bar to fit really, really tight. So I can get pretty close just with measuring, but sometimes that little bit of how far that arc is in the radius kind of gets me a little bit. So this is my solution if I can't get it that precise. I got the hoop adjusted to fit nice and tight, but because it hits the mounting plate at an angle, the sleeve won't work, but I came up with a real good idea to mount it up. I welded some flat plate to the bottom of the tubes, drilled holes in it which are wider than the mounting plates on the dash. I also put a vertical tab which I will drill into it. This will make it removable and secure. And of course, I'm painting as I'm going, even though I know I'll have to sand some of this paint off when I go to weld the crotch bars on. I'm using a piece of square tube that I've cut into flat strips, and those ridges will give it a whole bunch of strength to use as a clamp. Next, rear hoop floor plate. So I'm building this piece of channel here, and the reason I'm doing this is the rear hoop for the roll bar is going to mount to this plate. And I'm doing this because that tin was cut out for some reason or another. I think it had a headache rack or something to do with the fire department or some Cheese Whiz roll bar of some sort. But that tin's really not structurally sound enough. So this will fold over and this will weld to a piece of the hat metal. This side will weld to the pinch seam for the rear of the cab. That'll allow it to fit inside the hat. Of course, after I welded the plates in, I figured out I was going to use a flange plate to mount the bar, so then I had to drill it. This makes it a little easier to see how that channel is welded into the pinch seams and to this large post here. I mean, this is a substantial piece of metal that goes through here. I don't know where I got these little flange plates, but I've got 4 of them, 2 of them underneath. I welded nuts to the back of them with bolts lining all the holes up. Then they will have a corresponding piece on the hoop. So now that those are done, back to the tube bender, finish making the rear hoop, and then I'm going to make a crossbar. And I use my garage door and the floor to line everything up. Quick poor man's notcher, and it works just absolutely perfect for this application. This is the crossbar at the bottom portion of the rear hoop. Made a few adjustments, a few test fits, and I made sure to use the hoops for the top and the doors to make sure everything lined up. After that, paint everything I can except obviously the top crossbar because there would be crotch tubes there, and then weld her in. The nice part about welding to these flanges is everything will line up when you're done, so it kind of makes it easy instead of trying to make a sleeve to make it fit. But now it's on to the crotch bars. Okay, I've got this really nice saw that I like using for chopping. It's a bladed saw, it's not a friction saw, so the metal's not scorching hot. But I found if you set the compound angle at 25 degrees, and then it takes a little bit of practice to figure out where to cut it. But this is the poor man's tube notcher, so here you go. Then you flip it over, and I've got a couple little corners that I use as references. There's a well-notched tube. And then I just use the grinder to knock the corners off, and it's good. I also use the seam as a reference, just so I know I get it the same on both ends. Now I'll just clean it up with the sanding disc, and we're ready to go. I built 4 of those crotch bars, and of course sanded off my primer where I needed to weld them. Took a lot of time making sure they were straight and where I wanted them. And little trick, by the way, you can use a ratchet strap to hold everything in place till you get it tacked. Once it's tacked, burn it in. Takes a lot of time to weld full circle all the way around all of these pieces. I kind of do all the top and then all the sides and then all the bottom. That way you're not climbing around it as much as you think. But all in all, I'm pretty happy with how this is coming out. So next step is a little bit of masking, a whole bunch of primer and paint. And now I've got a finished product up top here. The more I walked around this and looked at it and absorbed it, the more I really like how this bar came out, especially since I don't do a lot of tube work. Couple afterthoughts. I had these tabs that were welded together laying around, so I added those in. It just ties it into this pinch seam over here in the B pillar. A little more structure. It won't hurt anything. Don't know if it'll help, but it certainly won't hurt. It fits really tight. It fits really close. And I know this all looks really weird, but it's around the dash. I can use all of my door handles. I think the cage matches the profile of the top pretty doggone well. And I have a half stick of tube left. That's unusual for me when I'm doing roll cages. I usually end up with a pretty good size pile of scrap. I guess I'll revise that. I no longer have half a stick left. I'm going to use that half a stick on a little bit of an afterthought here. I'm going to run a diagonal and really increase the strength of this cage. Yes, I am closing my eyes when I'm tacking these in. When I'm doing these compound weird joints for cages and stuff, I don't do enough of them to really get real fast at it, but I'll just start with knocking off an edge and seeing where it hits and then grinding a little or cutting a little, and eventually I get to where it fits within about 1/8 of an inch, and then it's weldable. Well, I had no intention on putting a diagonal tube in this, but I had 5 feet of tube left over. So I found a use for it. It really doesn't interfere with anything, and it probably triples the lateral side-to-side structure of the roll bar. Even though it's overkill for the use of this vehicle, why not if you have the tube? Now I've got to get the hoops for the top cleaned up. I would be curious to know if any of you have ever seen this tape like is on these hoops. It's a padded, real gummy, sticky adhesive, and I have not been able to peel it off. The only way I've been able to get it off is I heat it up with my MAP gas torch and then scrape it. And then once I have the main stuff off, then I soak it in that citric adhesive remover. You can see here it's all shiny and gooey. And then I can start wiping it off. But it's like hours to do each one of these. Once it's all cleaned off though, it took primer real well and paint real well. So we'll get the top on now. Got the cage done. I'm gonna get the top put back on today and clean the inside of this because it has a ton of overspray, paint dust, welding, grinding things in it. I'm trying to get the interior done so I get the top back on this, because next week this goes down to the exhaust shop. I don't have anything to bend 3.5 inch exhaust tube with, or the 2.5 off the collectors for that matter. But once I get exhaust on this, it'll be on the homeward stretch, I guess. That fits pretty doggone tight. All the top hardware is now bolted in and we are ready to install the top. Turns out the easiest way to put these tops on, get that cord in the channel, is flipping them upside down like this. Kind of got to keep it straight and work it from one side to the other. And that cord stays in the channel real well. As such. Once you get it all the way, snap both ends and then just flip it up over. Got about a half dozen snaps left to snap, but I gotta let this top warm up enough so it kind of expands and relaxes. It's been cold this winter, so it's been sitting. Makes it a little tough to stretch. Cage almost looks like someone knew what they were doing. Fits pretty doggone well, like it belongs there. I got a couple questions asked to me about the cage in here. First of all, this is not a rock crawler, rock bouncer, something that has a high risk of being on its lid. So my intent with building this cage is to build one that has a little more protection than tent posts and a canvas top. This thing goes over, that windshield frame's probably not going to keep you from dying, so I wanted something a little more in the way of protection. Also, I wanted to be able to open and close the windows without opening the door. So, yes, running your A-pillar all the way down to the floor with no bends is probably the strongest way to go. Running diagonals and cross laterally and fore to aft are going to create way more triangles and way more strength. That being said, my front hoop has 4 attachments to the rear, so that'll stabilize a little bit front to rear. It's also has a post there, and it comes down to the dash. Now in that dash, the A-pillar, there are probably 6 or 7 different pinch weld seams that go into this A-pillar. So even though it is not nearly as strong as a tube going straight down, having that tied into that A-pillar will give it a limited amount of support. My thought was if it goes over, that A-pillar will give it enough support to keep you from dying. At that point, who cares if it totals it out or if you have to cut the whole top off at that point and replace it. Now, in the rear, I initially just had the B-pillar, which is real easy for it to do this. Now, for it to do this, it would still have to break one of those 4 post welds that are then the top tubes. So, initially I tied it into the floor with those big plates, and then I tied it into the B-pillar on both sides. So that gave it some stability and encompassed some of the strength of the B-pillar with the cage. Then when I got everything done, it was more than adequate for the intended use of this, but I had 55 inches of tube left over, and me being the guy that doesn't waste anything, I went ahead and put the diagonal across the back. Now that diagonal just barely clears the window back there so you can still see out. Its primary loop is over the driver's head, so the driver is safer than anyone. But with that diagonal going, you know, it's like a parallelogram that has now been braced. I could X-bar it and make it even stronger. Again, it's more than adequate for what this is going to be used for. I think I've actually gone more than what I really needed. If my wife flopped this, it would be at 0 miles an hour on a little canyon or something that she would probably roll it into a wall. If for some reason you got into a real weird accident and hit the skids and broad slid it and hit a curb and rolled it, I would say this would protect you, save your life, and most likely it would be cut up after that because the cage wouldn't do it twice. Whereas my rock crawler back here, I mean, it's got X braces, it's got several triangles. That one's been on its lid probably a dozen times. It's got a little tweak to it, but it's survived 15 years of me abusing the crap out of it. So I'm really confident this cage will be more than adequate for what I'm using it for. It's 175 tube, HREW, which is not DOM, but it's hot rolled electric welded. It's very strong. It's 120 wall, and it does have plates under the floor as well. Now, additionally, because someone has already drilled holes in the bed, I'm going to go ahead and build a roll bar in the bed and make a traditional truck bed hoop back there. Just why not? These holes were already drilled for something that had to do with the pump racks from the fire truck. Same thing with these holes on the fender. So I'm going to reuse those holes. I think it'll eliminate future rust. Now of the plates, these aren't quite as perfectly centered as I would have done them. But to me, not having to re-drill the holes and open up metal to new places to rust was, I can live with an 1/8 inch off or so. And once the tube and the bar's in, I don't think you'll really notice. And back to the tube bender. I was able to make this hoop identical to the other tubes because I wrote down all of the degrees that I bent the other tubes at. Got the kickbacks tacked in. Now I gotta put a crossbar between the lowers here. The crossbar I'm using is a diagonal exactly opposite of what's in the cage on the inside. Everything was tacked. I didn't want to fully weld this one inside the vehicle, so I pulled it out. That way I could weld all the tops, the sides, the bottom. I also put a tab on it for a rear-facing light, if you notice there on that crossbar. Makes it a little easier to weld when you can flip the roll bar over instead of having to do overhead welding. Well, there we go. The beads are okay. Now out to the big paint booth, which is outside. That way I don't have to clean up any overspray inside. Don't forget to paint the plates that go underneath the flooring. Got her all in. Missed a couple little spots on the green paint, but we can touch that up. And of course, plates on the back side so that you don't have a pull-through situation. And that's on all points of attachment. Time to bust out the interior here. You take these tailgate bed mats. They're like 5 feet long and 20 inches wide. They work great for floor mats. You just have to cut them out. It's a little bit hard to work with. Stuff's pretty stiff, but if you set it under your bracketing right, you really don't even need to put any screws in it. I think I will put one screw over here, just to kind of keep this pushed down a little bit, but these will fit great. And we're installed. Throw a couple screws in, but you just kind of whittle it away a little bit at a time, and I think that'll work. And seats are in, so we are ready to go to the exhaust shop. That's going to do it for this video. I really like how the roll bar and the cage turned out. Between the roll bar and the cage, I think we'd be safe in a decent rollover at this point. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I really do appreciate it. I also appreciate the comments, so keep throwing those in there. I think we're going to go do some four-wheeling on 21 Road at night. See you next time. Front dig, rear dig, lefty, righty.
Good job, bro.
This was his own. That's a better line. Kinda.
I'm gonna write that on there. I love the Shell Sage.
Right on that point, or it throws you one side or the other.
DOT is making it a lot harder.
worse than an ambulance.